Hi, my name is Lauren.
Hi, I'm Skylar. We are student teachers, and we want to talk to you about dyslexia in this video. Starting first with the background info, then going into assistive technology to help with dyslexia.
So I'm going to start by talking to you about dyslexia and how you can identify it in children. I highly recommend taking a chance to go through these different websites that we have that will be linked below. There's also going to be links specific to Canada and different school districts within Canada. So let's talk about dyslexia. According to Dr. Sally and Bennett Shaywitz, dyslexia is characterized by an unexpected difficulty in reading in children and adults who otherwise process the ability to do so. They have all the proper teaching, the motivation, and schooling that should make them be able to learn to know how to read and not have any issues. It's important to remember that reading is not a natural process. Like speaking is a natural process, reading doesn't happen naturally. Reading has to be taught. All visual learners learn to read the same way, just at different paces. Whereas people with dyslexia have a disconnect when learning to read. Their brain actually develops differently. Stanislaw Dehaene has done incredible research in neuroscience on how the brain learns to read and goes into more detail in his presentation, How the Brain Learns to Read. We're going to link it below here as well. In his research, he noted a trend between visual non-readers and visual readers. All visual readers had activity in the left temporal lobe, so right about here. So you'd start reading through the occipital lobe, which is at the back of the brain, and all visual readers, so people who already knew how to read, would have tons of activity in the left side. Non-readers, and he saw a tie with people with dyslexia, had activity in the right side of the brain and was able to determine that those readers were actually guessing at what they were doing. So we all receive reading the same way. All visual readers receive reading the same way in the occipital lobe, but readers, it transfers into the left, and non-readers or people with dyslexia transfers into the right. Now, I'm not suggesting that in order to tell if your child might have dyslexia, you need to go get a brain scan. It's not reasonable. This is the science behind it, and this is the research that has been done to determine what dyslexia looks like in the brain. I'm actually going to go over different ways on how we can detect it without needing to go to that step and things we can do within the classroom. There is a website called itshardtoread.org. It's an amazing resource in helping understand dyslexia, as it can actually give you the experience of what it might look like to be someone with dyslexia. It's got really neat ways of utilizing font and changing up the font. It also covers letters and jumps letters around. It is important to note that not all people who have dyslexia experience dyslexia in the same way. And it isn't just always jumbled letters and not just words jumping on a page. While it can be that in some cases, it is not like that in all cases. Readers with dyslexia can also have trouble with reading comprehension, spelling, and writing. So when you're looking at your struggling readers in your classroom, those are things that you're also going to look for to see if they may have dyslexia or not. Remember, it's really important that dyslexia is a neurological condition and it's inherited. So most likely if your student has dyslexia, they may have a first-generation parent or grandparent that has it as well. And if you go back far enough, you'll see it quite often. It's also one of the most common learning disabilities found in the world. About 2 in 5 students across Canada have dyslexia, and often many of those students will go undiagnosed and unnoticed. This is why we're really wanting to talk about dyslexia. There's a high likelihood that we're going to have a student in our future classroom that will have dyslexia, and we want to be able to help them out the best way possible. The good news is dyslexia is recognized as a learning disability in Canada. That's really great news because that means that there's funding available, it means that there's programs that can be made available, and districts have the power to bring in technology that students can use. The not so fun part and the not so good news, dyslexia, the word dyslexia, is not recognized in many circles in many districts around Canada, which means that there tends to be an issue with diagnosing students early enough, techniques are not being used to help them become fluent readers, and students are not getting the help that they need because we're not using the proper term. If not diagnosed with dyslexia early enough, children can grow up feeling insufficient, they may feel dumb, that it's their fault. These students sometimes end up hating literature and reading because of their struggle, when in reality, their brain just works differently. And again, it was developed differently. And we can help them become fluent readers. People with dyslexia and readers with dyslexia can be quite good readers when given the proper techniques. As teachers, we can foster that love of literature for all of our students, even with those with dyslexia. Another really great website is called understood.org. It gives a lot of options to helping parents and teachers help with early diagnosis, and they want us to take note. Taking note is to N for notice if there is something going on with your child that is out of the ordinary. O for observe and keep track of patterns. T for talk with other people who can support your child. This includes learning support teachers, the students, your student's teacher. It could also be administration at the schools. There's tons of people there who are willing to support your kids. Finally, there's E for engage. You need to engage your child to get the information and explore on what to do. Ask them what their reading experience is like. Read them books about kids who also have dyslexia and see if they can make any relation to it. Sometimes kids don't know what's going on because they've never been exposed to it. By exposing to them to things like dyslexia or any other type of learning disability, they're going to be able to identify that that might be something that they're going through. So let's talk about some of the big facts about dyslexia. So about 1 in 5 people worldwide have dyslexia. There's about 750,000 students who are dyslexic. 40% of children who have a learning disability will experience mental health issues later on due to feeling insufficient. 50% of adults with low literacy levels live below the poverty line, and 60% of adolescents in rehab for drugs and alcohol have a learning disability. So these are some really big things that we need to focus on and some things that we need to address. The good thing is that dyslexia can be identified as early as kindergarten. So our little 5-year-olds, we can see that right away. If discovered early, children with dyslexia can learn to read with their peers and learn to read proficiently without having any issues or without the need of an extra aid. Also, if we can increase the national literacy rate by 1%, we're going to have a $32 billion growth in our economy annually. 1%. And keep in mind that there's 50% of adults who are in poverty due to low literacy rates. So that is really going to help fix that. And then another cool thing, approximately 35% of entrepreneurs have dyslexia, which means that there is successful people out there. Let's talk about people with dyslexia as 3D thinkers. People with dyslexia have the incredible ability to think in 3D. This can be part of the reason why they struggle with reading and writing. For example, if I take a chair and I flip it upside down, backwards, 360, horizontal, whatever, no matter what angle you look at that item, it's still a chair. But with letters, it's different. As we know with letters, they're always in whatever orientation that letter. You can't have a backwards A and you can't have an upside down N because an upside down N is a U. So letters like B, Q, D, and P tend to be the most difficult letters because when you start flipping those ones upside down and horizontal and vertical, they start looking like other letters. So people who have dyslexia tend to get these letters confused quite often. It is important to teach your new readers that a letter is only that letter when it's orientated in the proper way. Students with dyslexia start to thrive with STEM in late intermediate, middle school, and upwards, and more complex math when it's introduced into the classroom because of their unique ability to think in 3D, their spatial expertise, and their problem-solving abilities. Keep in mind, things that kinesthetic with STEM, you don't really require a lot of reading for those things, but they require that ability to be able to look at something and flip it upside down in their mind. So how do we recognize dyslexia in our students? All new visual readers at any age, any cultural background, any ethnicity, learn to read the same way, but at their own pace. Some take longer than others, and it's important not to label struggling readers as someone who may have dyslexia without doing all the proper screening first. It's really important that if you think that you may have a student who has dyslexia, that you need to reach out to your learning support teachers, maybe reach out to your administration, reach out to counselors to really find out what's going on and make sure you do your proper screening. It's likely though that a new reader who continues to struggle with reading and spelling, they may have dyslexia. If it continues throughout the whole year where the rest of your students have progressed as normal or as expected, that the student who's not may actually have dyslexia. And that's when it's time to start screening. All too often, these new readers and learners are dismissed as slow learners, unmotivated, or lazy. Including books about dyslexia in the classroom or in home, and reading it aloud to your students may give some students the encouragement they need to tell you that they may relate to a main character who also has dyslexia. So some common indicators of dyslexia that you need to be looking out for. The student may mispronounce words like saying Betty Tear instead of teddy bear. They sometimes confuse letters that look similar, B, D, Q, and P, or maybe a letter that when flipped upside down looks like another one, U and N, or M and W. They sometimes confuse letters that sound similar, like D, T, B, P, or F, V. They struggle to read familiar words like cat or the, especially if there's no pictures. Things that we consider sight words, they may still struggle to read those, or you'll notice that they start memorizing books. Another thing to look out for is they might have difficulty remembering and following directions. They may have a hard time with stories that rhyme or lyrics that rhyme, and they tell stories that are really hard to follow. And it's just because things are not connecting properly. I want you to remember that understood.org wants us to take note and get our new readers the help that they need. And with all that information, all that background, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'm going to bring Skylar back in, and she's going to talk to you about some assistive technology that we can bring into the classroom that can be used with all students or students with dyslexia.
Hi, I'm back. So I'm going to be talking to you about 3 different tools that you can use to help individuals with dyslexia. These are technology tools that can be bought in separate areas. So the first one is called a C pen reader. So this pen can recognize text on paper. So it'll read to your reader. So if the student is struggling to read in a classroom, it can read to them. It can be connected to headphones. It doesn't need Wi-Fi. It's really amazing and can help individuals who struggle with that. It also has a dictionary and a lot of other built-in features. It has an 8-hour battery, and there's no setup required. It's just the pen. This tool is extremely beneficial for students in grade 3 and beyond. There's been a lot of individuals who struggled in the classroom on tests and whatnot and needed individuals to read to them to be able to actually benefit from what they were learning. And this pen can stand in for that individual. So you no longer need to get another person into the class to help that student. You just need a pen. However, the pen does cost around $295 on Amazon, making it far less accessible to students. But there is that funding that Lauren has previously talked about. So that is a source that could be used. The next one is called Co-Writer. So Co-Writer came up repeatedly as the best writing tool for people with dyslexia and others who struggle with handwriting or the expression of thought. This program can be used on web and iOS and Chrome extension. So you can build libraries of words based on what you're writing about. So let's say you're writing about like Harry Potter. They'll come up with words based on people who search up Harry Potter information. So like Hogwarts will come up. And so that student no longer needs to know that information going in, but it will help them. So let's say they write hog. They're like, oh, you mean Hogwarts, and it'll assist that writer. So Co-Writer works on all major platforms, as I said, including Chromebooks, iPads, PCs, and Macs. It works with learning management systems like Google Classroom, Canva. So it's really accessible on all platforms, but it is a system you have to pay for. So if you want to get more people involved, it actually costs less. So with a minimum of 150 accounts, you only have to pay $15 per account. Let's get even more individuals involved. So let's say a minimum of 10,000. That's only $2.25 per individual account, which is still very costly, and that requires your whole district to be involved. So that's something that you can definitely vouch for in your district that can help your learners. Also, it's not just reading and writing that affects people with dyslexia, it's also math. So there's a tool for math learners called ModMath, where It works on iOS, and the developers behind this app created it for their son, who has dyslexia and dysgraphia. The program provides students with virtual graph paper, and they can use the touchscreen keypad to solve math problems without using a pencil. They will have to type equations on a keyboard, so if they prefer diction, this app might not be for them. So in addition to basic math problems, ModMath can now handle complex algebraic equations, making it much more accessible to all grades. Before, it would only be really usable for students up to grade 3, but now there's the possibility to do algebraic equations on it, which is so much better for students who do struggle with dysgraphia. Dysgraphia affects kids with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and other disabilities. So the way it works is it allows older students to complete more complex math assignments, including fractions, square roots, and algebraic equations. Print out the work pages to turn in at school, upload to Dropbox, or send worksheets via email or text. Move completed equations to various points on a page and save assignments in searchable documented libraries. So those are just like 3 resources for technological tools that can help students with dyslexia. There are so many more out there, but these were some of the best that I could find. With adding technology into the classroom, there can sometimes be some hesitation and some false facts that get tossed around. We're going to break down the 5 myths of assistive technology for students with dyslexia. The first myth being, using assistive technology is cheating.
No, it actually isn't. Students with dyslexia have a learning disability. Just as you provide different tech for other visible learning disabilities, we need to do the same thing for students who have dyslexia. Text-to-speech tools help bypass decoding deficits, dictation tools transcribe spoken word to text so that students with dyslexia do not have to worry about spelling, and assistive tech eliminates barriers that stand in the way of students' intellectual ability. Assistive tech does not give students the answers either, nor does it help them formulate ideas. They still have to do those things themselves. Assistive tech is just going to read what's on the page. They still have to do all of the formulating ideas and coming up with the answers themselves. Assistive tech simply facilitates tasks that are normally made difficult or even impossible by a brain-based learning disability.
Myth number 2, assistive tech lowers motivation.
It's our goal as teachers to cultivate intrinsic motivation. We want our students to feel internally motivated and feel internal success. Assistive tech can give students with dyslexia independence, and independence is a key motivating factor for anyone. The independence gained from assistive tech can give students with dyslexia the motivation to engage with the written language, as well as give these students the opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge, give their best effort, and participate fully in their education.
Myth number 3, listening to audiobooks makes it harder to learn how to read.
Many reading experts note that read aloud tools does not slow the development of reading skills. In fact, they note that these tools can foster better reading skills, especially for students with dyslexia. Listening to audiobooks and seeing the words help improve decoding and writing skills for all students. Listening and seeing the words help develop several reading and language skills, such as these ones over here. Anytime that you read aloud to your students or children and have them see the words, you are developing key reading and vocabulary skills.
Myth number 4, students can learn how to use assistive technology on their own.
Well, in a lot of cases, students and children are fairly good at figuring out tech. We do need to explicitly teach these students with dyslexia how to use this assistive tech. This means that yes, we need to know it too. And it's critical to ensure the success of students. Learning how to use assistive tech and how to apply it to school assignments involves skills. Students still need to know the importance of proper enunciation and sufficient context when using speech to text. Without knowing this, the student can become frustrated that the tool is not working and give up. Autocorrect tools are great when you do not know how to spell, but you still have to know how to mostly spell the word correctly. If you don't know how to, or you don't have the majority of the word, it's not effective, and often you'll get the wrong word. Think about when you're texting yourself. We still need to teach and guide proper decoding, spelling, and sentence structure. It's important for students with dyslexia to gain the autonomy in assistive tech, but we need to first start by teaching them how to use it properly so they can work towards that autonomy.
Myth number 5, assistive technology gives an unfair advantage to students who use it.
To feel like a valued member of a classroom in school, students need to be treated fairly. We all know this. A common misconception of fair is that it's same or equal, where fair is actually more about equity, right? We want to make sure that everyone has what they need to succeed. Education can only be fair and equitable for everyone if unique needs are accepted as part of every classroom. The best thing about assistive tech for dyslexia is that all students can use it. There's nothing that says that your students cannot use some of the programs that we discussed earlier. School and districts need to broaden their use of assistive tech. Text-to-speech and speech-to-text tools make reading and writing possible for students with dyslexia, but they can also make reading and writing more productive for all students, which incorporates that universal design for learning. When teachers incorporate universal design for learning principles, they also include assistive tech so that all students can be successful and reach their educational goals. And if everyone's using the same assistive tech in the classroom, no one's gonna feel different or like they need that extra help. It's just something you include.
In short, assistive technology provides students with dyslexia the opportunity to engage with text on an age-appropriate level and develop critical vocabulary and comprehension skills. Many of this tech is accessible by the students and does not need to be constant adult support once they learn how to use the tech. This fosters independence, which creates intrinsic motivation as these kids can feel successful in something otherwise near impossible before. When implementing a universal design for learning platform, all students have access to the same tools, and students with different abilities feel less stigmatized by their need to use assistive tech.
Thank you for watching our video today. Again, my name is Lauren.
And I'm Skylar.
And we'll hope to see you next time.